Are you curious why the Brown family collapsed the moment real leadership, not theatrics, was required? Christine's memoir offers a revelation so unsurprising it almost feels redundant. Kody Brown is not, nor has he ever been, a free thinker. According to her account, he absorbs the worldview of whoever last spoke to him with the enthusiasm of a sponge dropped into a puddle. The early example is almost endearing. His friend observed Jewish holidays, so suddenly Kody did too. The implication is clear. Present an identity, any identity, and Kody will promptly try it on. No instructions required. Naturally, this explains why Robin has been able to steer him with such remarkable ease. Her insistence that she can speak Kody has always been less a demonstration of love and more an admission of fluency in manipulation. She routinely corrects his sentences, finishes his thoughts, and, when cameras are not rolling, allegedly dictates major family decisions. The COVID era merely showcased this dynamic in high definition. Christine's commentary will no doubt bruise his ego, but it simply articulates what has long been obvious. Kody's tendency to adopt the personality of the nearest influential figure has a long and comedic history. Consider the infamous refusal to attend a Hawaiian roast pig barbecue, an act framed as personal conviction rather than the simple rudeness it so clearly was. Or the family mission statement, a project seemingly borrowed from the Dodgers and inflated to such absurd proportions that entire walls were sacrificed to accommodate its sprawling self-importance. One could almost sympathize with the older Brown children. It is difficult to blame them for their distance when public association risks the social equivalent of secondhand embarrassment. Imagining a neighborhood gathering interrupted by Kody sweeping in with Robin's permanently stricken expression in tow is enough to trigger a visceral, "No thank you." The most mystifying aspect is how long anyone took to decode the phrase, "I speak Kody." It has never been a declaration of connection. It is admission of user interface mastery. Anyone familiar with narcissists instantly recognized the translation. I know which buttons to press. And Kody, ever the willing device, has made himself simple to operate. His public persona has always been a curated illusion. Grand declarations, flashy symbols of success, and the constant need to boast about wives, children, houses, and watches, provided they could serve as props in a performance. Even his pride in his children surfaced primarily when he could attribute their accomplishments to himself. He famously claimed ownership of 4 houses in Vegas, despite being barely present in one and functionally absent in most. He craved the shock value of polygamy while avoiding nearly every responsibility it requires. Robin, manipulative though she is, at least recognized opportunity when she saw it. A man desperate for admiration and remarkably easy to guide. She secured financial stability without needing to exert much effort. The twist, of course, is that she has become the sole employee tasked with managing the unwieldy enterprise known as Kody Brown. What she envisioned as a part-time arrangement has become a full-time job without benefits. In the end, the great irony is that the man who insisted on broadcasting his authority has spent decades outsourcing it. The bravado, as always, was merely costume. The reality is far less impressive and far easier to direct. Let's talk about the uncomfortable truth behind their financial hardship. It wasn't fate, it was poor leadership. The great mystery surrounding this family's early finances is, frankly, not much of a mystery at all. 4 adults crammed into a 3-bedroom trailer, all allegedly employed, yet perpetually broke. An impressive feat of financial underachievement. The expectation, of course, is that a household with multiple working adults and no children would achieve at least a whisper of economic stability. Instead, the entire operation seemed engineered for chronic scarcity. The income sources alone explain most of the dysfunction. The so-called patriarch built his Wyoming career on selling Book of Mormon educational videos, a niche so narrow it barely qualifies as employment. Supplementing this were part-time museum shifts, paper routes, and engraving gigs, none of which are known to fund multifamily dreams. The sole stable income belonged to the one wife with a full-time state job, and naturally, that was the job he attempted to uproot the moment wanderlust struck. Moving repeatedly is expensive. Perpetually relocating is financial self-sabotage. Yet, stability was never high on his list of priorities. What was high on the list? Taste. Expensive and spectacularly unsustainable taste. The sort of taste that produces a father zipping around in a sports car while his children rehearse the texture of stale bread. This style of leadership is not rooted in religion or culture, but in garden-variety narcissism, the conviction that one deserves luxury while everyone else adjusts their expectations downward. The pattern echoes countless domestic dynamics where men believe respect should be granted based on nothing but their own opinion of themselves. The image of a man demanding weekly steak and potatoes meals while resenting the purchase of a single shared steak for his children captures the same ethos at work here. Then there is the matter of fertility. Relentless, unbroken fertility. 13 children require an equally relentless cycle of unpaid maternity leave, each one knocking the family's precarious finances further off balance. Any momentary progress evaporated the instant another pregnancy began. The children's well-documented disappointment at later pregnancies was not a one-time event. It was the logical outcome of a decade-long pattern where every baby tightened resources and diluted attention. The timeline speaks for itself. 3 years into the first marriage, a second wife arrives and conceives almost immediately. A third wife follows shortly, arriving just before the birth of the first child and becoming pregnant herself right away. 12 children in roughly 10 years. Not a family plan so much as a financial demolition strategy. The household never had a chance to stabilize because stability was never part of the design. In short, the question isn't why they were broke. The question is how they managed, against all odds and basic mathematics, to be anything else. The moment Kody reported Solomon's phone placement tells you everything you need to know about who controlled the household. The mythology of Kody's rules continues to crumble under the weight of its own contradictions. Every time the household descended into pandemic protocol theater, the same pattern emerged. Kody postured as the architect of a grand safety doctrine, while Robin functioned as the ever-present approval authority. The choreography was almost comically transparent. Consider the moment Kody dutifully tattled on Solomon for slipping a cell phone into his pocket so Robin could swoop in and warn him about invisible bodily dangers, an exchange that made the pretense of unilateral rulemaking especially flimsy. Or the episodes in which Kody paused to seek Robin's permission about whether the tenders could attend a bonfire, or whether it was acceptable to stand near Mary, who, by his own admission, had been following the rules, while Robin monitored the situation through FaceTime. The implication was unmistakable. The household protocol originated not with Kody's decisive leadership, but with Robin's running commentary. The explanation offered for these bodily dangers only deepened the absurdity. The suggestion that proximity to a phone might somehow threaten male reproductive health placed the entire operation squarely in the realm of conspiracy folklore. And this was hardly an isolated belief. Christine has already confirmed that both Kody and Robin circulated conspiracy theory videos during the pandemic, privately indulging in the content while publicly feigning skepticism. It fits neatly within the broader ecosystem of QAnon-adjacent paranoia and the online manosphere that both seemed all too eager to dabble in. Meanwhile, the real casualties of this household theatrics were the children drafted into the spectacle. One can easily imagine classmates witnessing Solomon's morning routine. The phone policing, the hair-combing dramatics, the choreographed parental drive-off, and storing enough material for years of teasing. There is nothing entertaining about a child being deployed as a prop in his parents' ongoing narrative control. And then there was the unforgettable scene in Mary's house. Kody sputtering through an attempted justification about why a nanny could come and go freely while his own children could not. Robin's face during that exchange delivered the verdict before he finished the sentence. Even they seemed dimly aware that the excuses no longer resembled logic. The public messaging insisted the rules were his creation. The actual power dynamics told a different story entirely. All the while, the pair who sermonized most fervently about proper behavior were repeatedly seen out in public without masks. In the end, the elaborate system of restrictions amounted to little more than a jointly constructed illusion, one that collapsed the moment its architects forgot to maintain it. Are you trying to understand how a man can build an entire plural marriage system around impressing his father rather than loving his wives? Kody Brown's marital history reads less like a spiritual journey and more like a decades-long performance review conducted for the benefit of his father, Win. Each choice among the original 3 wives appears suspiciously tailored to win paternal approval rather than romantic fulfillment. Mary, the inaugural spouse, was the safest route into familial favor. As the daughter of one of Win's closest church friends, she offered instant legitimacy in the faith and an easy way for an ambitious young man to make his father beam with pride. This was the gold star on the chart marriage, symbolically meaningful, emotionally shallow, and ultimately incompatible. Janelle, on the other hand, provided something far more practical: income and infrastructure. She helped launch the plural family as a functioning economic unit, and her mother's subsequent marriage to Win only elevated her value. Rumors that she was Win's favorite certainly didn't hurt. Janelle became the wife selected for her utility and proximity to paternal admiration, an arrangement that looked remarkably strategic for a man allegedly motivated by spiritual calling. Christine's addition functioned as the final proof of competence. As church royalty, she allowed Kody to demonstrate that he could manage 3 wives and thus solidify his status within the faith community. If Mary was the ceremonial initiation and Janelle the financial engine, Christine was the prestige hire meant to impress the board. And then came Robin, the first wife chosen not for Win, not for optics, not for royalty or revenue, but for Kody himself. After 2 decades of dutiful marriages that left him bored, restless, and perpetually underwhelmed, he embraced Robin with the zeal of a man convinced he had finally earned his reward. She arrived at precisely the moment a traditional monogamist might pursue an affair. Polygamy simply allowed him to institutionalize one. The sports car energy was palpable. The midlife crisis mistress elevated to marital status, complete with the conviction that he had at last discovered true love. The mythology of Robin as destiny grows thinner when examining the timing. The pursuit coincided perfectly with rising ambitions for fame, a televised platform, and the fantasy of becoming polygamy's savior. The casting could not have been better. A struggling single mother who suddenly appears in Kody's orbit, following advice to get her scent out there, driving long distances to mingle with his social circle. Conveniently, the family was just bland enough on its own that producers needed a hook. Enter the 4th wife storyline, and a woman seemingly eager for the opportunity. Viewed chronologically, the pattern becomes unmistakable. Each wife served a function: Mary as aspiration, Janelle as infrastructure, Christine as legitimacy, and Robin as self-indulgence. The supposed spiritual calling dissolves under this lens, replaced by a far more mundane narrative of ambition, dissatisfaction, and well-timed reinvention. If the early marriages were exercises in duty, Robin was the moment Kody finally permitted himself desire, and then rewrote the script to claim it had been destiny all along. Are you someone who has watched a family collapse under the weight of a father's ego? The spectacle of Kody Brown's ongoing alienation from most of his children has evolved into something remarkably bleak. Watching Madison attempt to take responsibility for the consequences of his choices is a masterclass in misplaced guilt. Her effort to rationalize his indifference exposes a painful truth. Adult children still reach for the parent who keeps letting go. Yet she searches for her own fault in a fracture he engineered. Every child outside Robin's household can cite at least one moment when he undermined their mothers, planting seeds of division and then feigning surprise when the garden he neglected refused to flourish. The estrangement is not an accident. It is the bill his family pays for the mothers who left him. The children, as always, are collateral damage. One can almost tally the therapy sessions required to unspool the simple, devastating question: why doesn't my father want me? The answer is inconvenient, but not complicated. Kody Brown was never equipped for the family he insisted on building. Both Christine and Janelle have noted his complaints that they were holding him back from his dreams, a sentiment that would be baffling if it weren't so revealing. He wanted the image of a sprawling plural family without the weight of actually leading one. The delay of nearly 2 decades before adding a fourth wife speaks for itself. The dream was grand, the follow-through limited. His entrepreneurial ventures, those glamorous get-rich-quick schemes and investments, consistently dissolved into nothing. Unable to provide in the way he imagined a patriarch should, he instead fragmented the family, retreating to the one environment where his ego remained intact. Robin, ever cooperative, offered a fresh start, unburdened by history or dissent. The resulting division between her children and the rest of the family was not accidental. It was strategic. Suddenly, he could reinvent himself as the model husband and father, as long as the definition of family shrank to 1 wife and 5 children. The remaining 13 became optional, an afterthought he no longer had to acknowledge. It is remarkable how quickly domestic competence, washing dishes, helping with school routines, perhaps even cooking dinner, emerged once the responsibilities were limited to a single household. It was never that he couldn't be that kind of father. It was that he refused to be that kind of father for everyone. Janelle's observation that legalized polygamy would have forced him into child support obligations is almost too fitting. Imagine the urgency with which he might rediscover paternal involvement if child abandonment carried legal consequences. Nothing underscores the emotional fallout more starkly than hearing Madison refer to him not as dad, but simply Kody. It is the vocabulary of resignation. The pattern is painfully consistent. If he wanted to show up, he would. If he wanted to attend Isabel's surgery, he would have. If he wanted to see Garrison's house, or check on Truly, or any other child, he would. The list is endless because the excuse is always the same. Blame becomes a convenient shield against responsibility, affection, or effort. The tragedy is not subtle. These children deserved far better than a father who treats presence as an optional hobby and abandonment as a lifestyle choice. The wives deserved better than being scapegoats for his failures. and the ongoing performance of victimhood cannot disguise what has long been undeniable. This is a man whose selfishness eclipses even the vast size of the family he once claimed to cherish. Are you someone who wonders why certain reality stars insist on oversharing what absolutely no one asked to know? Few reality television moments manage to achieve the unholy trinity of tacky, tone-deaf, and mortifying quite as thoroughly as the latest round of flirtatious innuendo from Kody and Robin Brown. Their on-camera declarations, dark, labored winks about licking one another, seemed engineered less for entertainment and more as a public service announcement to the ex-wives. Yes, they are absolutely still sexually active, and no, Robin is not the demure, born-again ingenue she has spent nearly a decade auditioning to be. Why such revelations must be delivered on national television, where their children can enjoy them for posterity, remains the great mystery. This is particularly rich, given the hyper-purity culture imposed on Robin's own kids, who would once have been chastised for something as innocent as a kiss. Apparently, scandal only becomes acceptable when performed by the family's reigning romantic duo. The spectacle might have been survivable had it ended there, but Kody helpfully added that he would consider another wife, strictly for the sexual benefits, of course. One can almost hear the network executives salivating. Promise a new season in exchange for a dating arc, and watch the fame-hungry applicants line up. The crew, trapped behind their cameras during this conversational train wreck, deserves hazard pay. As if the innuendos were not enough, the additional Bob/boob joke from Jen delivered the final blow, eliciting genuine physical recoil. But the most grating element is not the couple's insistence on broadcasting their intimacy. It is Robin's relentless, unquestioning laughter at every word that drops from Kody's mouth. This is the ecosystem that keeps his ego in fighting shape. A carefully curated circle of yes-wives whose job is to validate every impulsive thought he produces. Whether Robin was ever truly enamored of Kody is debatable. What is unmistakable now is the absence of any visible spark, replaced instead by a performative loyalty that props up his self-image while draining the dignity from every scene they share. Here's why comparing Kody to Jim Carrey is generous. He's inching much closer to The Shining than slapstick comedy. Kody Brown, never one to shy away from theatrical self-parody, offered a particularly memorable line in the latest episode preview. "Robin would never let me do anything naughty, as bad as I want to do it." Delivered with a contorted set of facial expressions that seemed borrowed from a Jim Carrey audition tape, though the final result veered closer to Jack Nicholson wandering the halls of the Overlook Hotel, the moment managed to be equal parts bizarre and unsettling. The performance did little to dispel the enduring impression of a man who appears increasingly adrift, emotionally, spiritually, and in every other conceivable category. Instead, it reinforced the dynamic long visible on screen. Robin presiding with unchallenged authority while he dutifully obeys. The insistence that she prevents him from indulging his naughty impulses felt less like praise and more like strategic PR, a conveniently flattering narrative constructed for public consumption. The more plausible interpretation is significantly less noble. Absent the constraints of legal procedure, the duo might well have been skipping off into the sunset with whatever financial windfall could be extracted from the other wives, bags slung over their shoulders like a pair of holiday season opportunists. His comment, when viewed in this light, reads as a belated attempt to recast himself as the reluctant participant, held back only by Robin's supposed moral vigilance. Even the aesthetics of the scene betrayed him. The new teeth, gleaming with an artificial brightness that matched none of the sentiment behind his words, only amplified the strangeness. The cumulative effect was simple. Something is profoundly off. And the line about naughty behavior may well have been a thinly veiled acknowledgement of the ongoing maneuvering around Coyote Pass and the property sales, moves that conveniently disadvantaged Janelle and Mary. The suggestion that Robin alone stands between him and further unfairness is a narrative that strains credulity. If the goal was to project restraint and virtue, the attempt backfired spectacularly. The only thing truly illuminated was the widening gap between the story being told and the reality unfolding on screen. Subscribe for more.